Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're
and
welcome.
Thank everyone for attending. I will share my screen. So the question, what actually is an agile mindset and why it may not be what you think it is? Sort of a controversial beginning, but I think by the end of the presentation, we have a clear idea of what an agile mindset is. For introduction, all the information that was spoken of earlier, Rudolph Johnson, my company is Better Scrum SECC, and all the other information that was spoken of earlier by our host is relevant. So the agile mindset, we promise it to our clients, we claim it as coaches, and the entire agile community seems to be in constant pursuit of it. But what is it? I've attempted to answer this question, and I have 3 of those answers. The agile mindset can be defined as a group of attitudes incorporated by the employees in the agile environment that includes various factors. This quote was authored by Priyanka Dutt. The agile mindset is all about embracing a mentality or approach that believes in adapting to change, learning through failures, and encouraging feedback to bring in consistent improvement. This quote was authored by Prachi Petkar. And the one that's best known, the agile mindset, is defined by the 4 values and described by the 12 principles of the Agile Manifesto, and then manifested through an unlimited number of practices and different ways of working. The source is Agile Alliance. The question is, are any of these answers correct? And that's what we're going to explore today. And the answer depends on how the question is interpreted. Is the question asking for a description of an agile mindset? Is it asking for the meaning of an agile mindset? Is it asking for the definition of an agile mindset? Because the what is and what is an agile mindset can be interpreted as any or all of these questions. The resulting answers can be as varied, unclear, or confusing. Now, the 3 answers that we heard in the other slide appear to be answering a specific interpretation of that question. And that is, what is the definition of an agile mindset? Now, definitions clearly identify a concept and clearly differentiates that concept from all other concepts. So definitions clarify boundaries of a concept. They clarify relationships between other concepts in the same class. Definitions provide summary statement about the concept, and a valid definitions are the same for everyone. So it's no, I don't believe this, I believe that. One definition. And that's why precise language leads to a clarity of thought. So let's go further. According to Aristotle, a valid definition must follow 3 rules. You have to find the genus. The genus is the class or the basic identity the concept you are defining belongs to. You have to identify the differentia. That is the characteristics that distinguishes it from all other members of the same class. And then 3, you have to state the essential characteristics of the concept. So there was a question earlier, the basic question for tonight, like, what is Scrum? And if the question was answered in the way it should have been answered, it would have started off that Scrum is a framework within which people can address complex problems while productively and creatively delivering products of the highest possible value. So let's break that down. Let's see if it meets the criteria of a definition. Genus, framework, yes. Differentia, allows people to address complex problems while productively and creatively delivering products of the highest possible value. So yeah, so Scrum the definition of Scrum is a valid definition. And it's a definition that can be utilized by everyone. If someone came along and said, well, no, Scrum is the methodology, you can say, no, there's a difference between methodology and framework. Scrum is a framework, and you can prove it as such. Therefore, you would be correct, and the other person would not be correct. Another example, the older definition for Kanban, a Japanese manufacturing system in which the supply of components is regulated through the use of an instruction card sent along the production line. Is this a valid definition? Yes, it is. Because at the time, Kanban was a manufacturing system. And what made it different from all other manufacturing systems at the time, it was Japanese in origin, and it regulates the supply of components through the use of an instruction card sent along a production line. That what made it Kanban. A more updated version would be a methodology to visualize work and limiting work in progress to increase efficiency. That would be valid today. And would that qualify? Yes, it would, because it is a methodology and it allows visualization of work and limits work in progress to increase efficiency. So now that we've established what a valid definition consists of, and we have examples of a valid definition, let's look at the three answers that we had earlier about what is Agile Manifest, what is the Agile Mindset, and see if they meet the same rules of definition. First, by Priyanka Datt, an Agile mindset can be defined as a group of attitudes incorporated by the employees in the Agile environment that includes various factors. Okay. The genus, group of attitudes, does that qualify? No, it does not. It can't be a group of something. It has to be a singular thing. Whether it's an attitude or not is a separate question, but it cannot be a group of attitudes. So therefore, it does not meet that requirement. Brantia, used by employees in an agile environment and includes various factors. Now, based on 3, state essential characteristics of the concept. You can't have various factors. You have to have the essential factors. And since they are not stated here, it does not meet the definition of a valid definition. It doesn't meet the criteria of valid definition. So now, this is not a sufficient definition of an agile mindset. Let's go to the next one. Prachi Kar. An agile mindset is all about embracing a mentality or approach that believes in adapting to change, learning through failures, and encouraging feedback to bring in consistent improvement. Embracing a mentality. The question is, what is embracing a mentality? It's yet to be identified. It says an agile mindset embraces a mentality, but identify what the mindset is before you embrace anything. Therefore, it fails on that level as far as a genus is concerned. And differentia adapts to change, learns through failure, and encourages feedback to bring consistent improvement. It's a little vague, but the portion of encourages feedback, I don't know if mindsets encourage feedback as opposed to people encourage feedback. So again, it's not, I don't think it meets that particular criteria as a differentia. It doesn't state essential characteristics. It doesn't even state the genus. There's no way to put the essential characteristics towards anything. So again, that one fails. And of course, the one that is predominant in our industry, from the Agile, stated in the Agile Alliance, Agile Mindset is defined by the 4 values and described by the 12 principles of the Agile Manifesto, and then manifested through an unlimited number of practices and different ways of working. The genus, 4 values and its 12 principles. When you just have the number 4, it fails. If it's a value, say it's a value and compare it to the rest of the values. There can't be 4 values. So let's forget about the 12 principles. That's just a supporting mechanism with the 4 values. So as a genus, it fails because it does not identify it. It identifies 4 values. Which values? All 4? It's not possible. It has, if it's a value, it has to be one of many values. Then you compare those 2 and you compare that one value to many values. So it fails on that front. Differentia. Unlimited number of practices and different ways of working. Again, rule 3. State the essential characteristics of the concept. Here he has unlimited number of practices and different ways of working. That is not essential. If you have unlimited, the essentials are to be the most important, so you have to limit it and be concise. So it fails on that level also. So yes, so the Agile Alliance, Agile Mindset definition fails as a definition. So if all these fail, what is the definition? Let's formulate one now. The Agile Manifest, the Agile Mindset is simple. It states it in the term. It's a mindset. And Agile is an adjective. It describes the mindset. So it's simple. The mindset is the genus, and the agility of it is a differentiator, as opposed to a quote unquote fixed mindset. Let's break that down. Mindset. What is a mindset? So instead of just repeating the term mindset, people go, okay, I know what you mean. Let's know exactly what we mean. A person's way of thinking or their opinions is according to Cambridge Dictionary. Thinking, the use or utilization of reason, the process of using your mind to understand matters, make judgments, and solve problems. Thinking in terms of opinion, the process of forming an opinion or idea about something. In this situation, we're going to stick with the use of reason as far as thinking is concerned. And then what differentiates it from other ways of thinking? Well, it's agile, which means from a mental perspective, able to think quickly and clearly. And from an agile management perspective, used for describing ways of planning and doing work in which it is understood that making changes as they are needed is an important part of the job. So how do we formulate an agile mindset definition from the genus and the differentiator? And this is what I came up with. The agile mindset is a way of thinking that quickly and clearly recognizes change and the response required for that change. So again, a way of thinking that quickly and clearly recognizes change and the response required for that change. Okay, it's a workable definition. But what would this thinking look like when applied in an agile transformation environment? So it's one thing to say, hey, this is my definition. It's a little generic. It doesn't mention any agile methodology, anything of that nature. But how would you apply that in the real world? Which is a legitimate question. It depends on your environment. If you're in a controlled environment, let's say you're doing work, you're an agile coach or agile professional, and you're doing work for a large company and they have some internal projects. I would label that as a controlled environment. You don't have the unpredictability of outside forces. What would that look like? Well, the change will happen relatively slowly. Recognizing change won't be as dynamic. And responding to change, you can use a myriad of strategies and execute against those strategies. And in utilizing those strategies, you can use whatever frameworks and methodologies that you think are best suited for that environment. So what you saw was I put SAPES, I put Scrum, I put Kanban. And the reason for that is when you're working in a controlled environment, something like SAPES framework may be appropriate, especially depending on the size of the company itself. But let's say you work in a more dynamic environment, or instead of doing projects for the company, you're producing products for end user outside the company. Things get a little more dynamic. Then what do you do with that? Well, utilizing the agile mindset, you have to say, okay, I have to respond to change. I have to recognize the change. I have to understand it, and I have to respond accordingly. In this situation, things happen much faster. Things you might apply may be different. You might apply less. You might apply Spotify. You might apply Scrum at scale. Things that may be a little more agile in their ability to be adaptive might be a better thing to choose in those situations. Regardless of the situation you're in, the definition of the agile mindset will be applicable to either of those situations. So in the application of the Agile mindset, the change, desire, and need of the customer or end user is essential in determining the usefulness of the frameworks, methodologies, and techniques an Agile professional employs. Therefore, the value or usefulness of Agile frameworks, methodologies, and techniques are subject to their effectiveness in achieving the goal of value delivery. Thank you. Any questions?
Feel free to unmute or type your questions in the chat box.
I assume that this presentation was controversial enough that it would elicit some questions.
Rudy, thanks for presenting. So I guess the question would be, I'm wondering, have you presented the topic at other events and maybe encountered some of the folks that, I don't know if you would have been at a conference, but maybe somebody that was one of the creators within the Agile Manifesto, or the definitions where you're sharing that, they don't meet the criteria from your perspective. Just wondering, have you had any discussion with any others that have advocated differently on those?
No, none of yet. I mean, internally to my client, I have. It clarifies thought processes for other coaches where I'm employed currently, and it gets everyone on the same page, but I haven't done that yet. What I'd like, the bottom line is no, I have not. I wouldn't mind, because in my what I do, is based on 2,000 years of logic. So I stand behind the things I present.
Yeah, I mean, the logic is there. I just didn't know if you've gotten into discussions with others. So
no, but yeah, I'm totally open to it. Good, a good discussion like that, I think both parties come out for the better.
Right,
We
thanks.
do. Oh, sorry, Brian. I just cut you off. I'm so sorry.
No. I was just saying thanks. So go move on to the next one.
We have a question in the chat box, and then I posted one from the LinkedIn Live. Would you like me to read them for you, or would you just like to read them?
Oh, you can read them. Okay,
so we have, how would an Agile mindset come in handy in the fields of other project management?
I think it'll come in handy. That's why I had the two short animations. One, which were a controlled environment, and if you saw on the bottom, it said company project. So in project management, Agile mindset will come in handy if you first look at the end result of your project as what is important, not the process itself. If you can look at the end result of the project as important, then you can apply Agile mindset. If you look at the process as important, then it won't apply. If you look at the second to the last slide, I think I mentioned that it is the need, desire, and change that actually determines the value of the different Agile tools we might use, being a framework or methodology. So if the tools in Agile, the methodology, the frameworks, the techniques are secondary or derive their value from the end we're trying to reach, which is value, then project management, where they put the process first, you will see that that is what you should not be doing. You should put the process second in service of what is the goal. And then once you do that, you can then start applying the Agile mindset. But as long as you put the process is supreme, Agile mindset will not apply.
And then we have, I'm new to Agile. This is from our LinkedIn Live. I'm new to Agile. What books would you recommend I could read regarding Agile?
It's extremely difficult only because the books that I read in reference to Agile, on average, are written before 1965. So in my bio and my introduction says I'm an Agile historian. Most of my knowledge on Agile goes back many years, and most of the important stuff that I consider important for me personally was written years ago. So most of the modern stuff, I do not have the knowledge of that, so I could not say. Maybe someone else can recommend something for you, but if I haven't read them, I cannot. I can't recommend. And let me think about it. I did read one, and it was by one of the originators of Scrum. So let me think about that. Maybe I put it in the chat later. So we have an issue of the link that was on on LinkedIn for this is taking them to a blank page. So there's many people saying that they can't get on because it's taking them to a blank page. Oops. It says the page says oops.
Page says oops.
Yeah. Is there any way we can send a link to those individuals? And since we do have plenty of time, I can just run through this again.
What link are they needing again? I'm sorry.
The link to this particular Zoom meeting. They're coming. They're where they're ending up. They're saying is somewhere on Expert Agile, and a page that just go oops. Like they're not.
The link, the Zoom link?
It's not the Zoom link. It was a link. I think it was a registration link. Is there any way to send out a blast or a comment?
The registration link. Hold on.
Yeah.
I know our live was not working tonight, so that might be what they're trying to get into.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and our live was not working.
Okay.
For some reason, our live page is not working right now.
All right.
So I can send out the Zoom link again.
All right.
That's
I sent someone the Zoom link that I was on, and they said they couldn't get on, even though I was able to get on it. I don't know. So technical difficulties.
Yeah, that's odd that they weren't able to get on.
So is it possible to send out a link that they can?
They should
They
be
can
able
access it.
to get on through the. Oh, I don't know why nobody can get on through the Zoom link. I can resend it to you.
But I don't. I wouldn't be able to send it out, so I don't know. Yeah, you wouldn't have the individuals that accept it. Only I would, but I don't think I can send it out again. But you can send it to me, and I can try. I don't know.
Yeah, because I know something's up with let me inbox. We do have another question while I'm getting ready to send it to you. If you want to just read them in there, and I'll send them to you, starting with David.
Starting with David, do you consider the team project as agile? If David can clarify the term project as agile. To be honest, I have a very liberal view of agile. Agile is anything that can be used to fulfill a goal. It's not restricted to things with the label agile. So if someone has a project, as long as a project has a defined goal stated, you can call it a project, I don't mind. But traditionally what a project is, I wouldn't consider that part of what Agilists do. What they do is they try to create value for their end user or customer. If that can be defined by that project, then that's fine. If it cannot, if it's a project in the traditional sense, then there's an issue.
There's a fair comment. I was going by your genus. If you want to be specific, then project wouldn't make sense for Agile term. So appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. And and that's what I was hoping for. I wanted this to be somewhat controversial and to be challenged. So David, please keep throwing those questions.
The link
Well,
has
no,
been
I don't
sent to
find
you.
it
Sorry.
controversial. I find it pretty straightforward. So I've been doing it for a few years, and the specification is very good, and it needs to be clear. So I'm glad you're sharing that with the 15 participants that you have. It's always been difficult over the years. Some people still don't get the classification, and in fact, many people don't. So it's I have to admit, at the beginning, I thought, what's he talking about? And then you came up with your slide, and then your main slide, and like, oh, okay, that's pretty straightforward. So I wasn't going to ask a question until you said projects, and like, okay, that rings my bell.
So I appreciate the straightforward comment, because Agilists tend to not be straightforward, which tend to be off-putting to most. And then Agile becomes a mystery for some. And as coaches, we need to communicate. So I try to be as straightforward, as plain as possible, get as many people up and running as possible, and get as many people as knowledgeable as possible, because it's just beneficial to everyone concerned.
So that's a problem, isn't it? I mean,
Yes.
if you have an Agilist that can't specify and communicate or listen and find the words for it, then that person probably is not an ideal Agilist until they learn to share the language, the appropriate language.
Yes. All right. If you can send it to me, maybe I can send it to some of the people that are contacting
I
me.
had emailed it to you, so you should be getting it.
Okay. All right.
Yep, I just went into the Zoom and I copied the link directly from there, so it should be good to go. I don't know.
Now, what I can do, and it really depends, this is supposed to go for up to an hour and a half. The presentation is not that long. It's pretty straightforward, as David was saying. I can always do it over again, and it's easy to understand. Okay, so the next one. What is the biggest challenge you have faced? And this is from Glennis. What is the biggest challenge you have faced trying to teach and or nurture the Agile mindset with your clients? Well, I think I was mentioned on top that I have 20 years experience as a trainer in customer service and conflict resolution. I don't have challenges in that, because I understand how to approach it. The key to Agile coaching is your soft skills. I have 20 years experience, basically as a trainer, human resource manager. I'm pretty much expertise in that, just through experience. So I understand what approach I have to take. And the first thing is not to overwhelm people. So I really don't have challenges, because my approach is such to avoid such things and get people from where they are, meet them where they are, and find out where they want to be. And I just take them there. So for me, it's relatively straightforward and easy. The other side of that, the flip side of that is your skills are not as sharp if you never run into challenges. So I try to get the biggest challenges that I can find, or new challenges, so I can make sure that my skills are sharp for those individuals that will not or do not want to deal with Agile, or individuals who my techniques that I've used just don't work on them. I have to go with new techniques. So I really don't have challenges, to be honest. Okay, Yogi. What are the various metrics one can look at to see how Agile a team is? Okay, so metrics, metrics are helpful. Metrics are like fire. You can cook your food and heat your house. You can burn your house down. So you have to be careful with metrics. People who rely on metrics almost blindly to tell them what the real world is, usually are going to have issues. There's a saying, it's actually a law, Goodhart's law. And it says, when measures become goals, they fail to be good measures. So you have to make sure your measures are measuring something objective. They're not just numbers in themselves. So then they don't measure anything but themselves. So with that being said, for a Scrum team, I would say story points, if they are derived correctly in the beginning, are a good way to determine how well a team is working together. Story points you commit to, then story points you're able to achieve at the end. I would say those are that is the metric for a Scrum team. Okay. I think that might be the last question.
We have one from Stanley from our LinkedIn Live.
Oh, so we say Agile is a mindset because thinking informs action. Well, I think all action is based on thought. I mean, conscious action. I mean, you breathe, that's not conscious. You know, when you're sleeping, you dream, that's not conscious, that's subconscious. But all conscious action is based on thought. So it's not restricted to Agile itself. So to say that is not controversial, because you'll say, we can say that about anything. It's the type of thinking that determines if it's the Agile mindset or not. And that type of thinking is the thinking that can change quickly with understanding of what that change is about. Where some individuals cannot do that. So if they cannot do that, you would not label them as having an Agile mindset. For those that can, they'll then fall under the label somehow, some way of an Agile mindset. It may not be the most ideal, but if they're able to think, the people who think quickly on their feet, that was a term that was used some time ago. You can think quickly on your feet, which means that you can adapt quickly to the circumstances that are that you're faced with. Those people have nothing to do with Agile management or project management or a business. Those people are Agile minded because they think quickly on their feet. So it's not restricted to the Agile management world or Agile coaching world. It's just a person who can think quickly on their feet with understanding of the situation at hand. Okay, Gerlin Carr, would you agree that successful leaders exhibit an Agile mindset? I would agree that successful leaders exhibit an Agile mindset, but I would not agree that Agile mindset is something that all successful leaders have. Some successful, and you say leaders is a broad term. So it depends on what you mean by successful leader. So if you mean leader of individuals, then I would tend to agree. If you mean leader as far as someone who leads a company to success, regardless of the individuals, I would disagree. There are some dogmatic individuals in this world who are wildly successful because of their dogmatism, because they do not waver from what they believed initially, and then they plow through regardless of the circumstances, and they become successful. And in fact, a lot of people who've been successful historically are those dog-minded people who will stay and just do until they're successful. One story is Taco Bell. I don't know how long it took him to be successful, but he tried it. He got divorced. He was left with nothing. He tried it again. He had this idea about tacos. He had a partner. He wanted to franchise. The partner said no, so they had to dissolve the partnership. So he's then set with nothing. It took him like 10 years just to get to the point where he might be successful. And then he just stayed with it, as the term says, come hell or high water. Now, everybody knows Taco Bell today, but at one time he was just a guy in a one-room flat, was flat broke. Now everybody knows what Taco Bell, and he retired a multi-millionaire, obviously. So I would say that some leaders of people, I would say yes. Leaders in other areas, not necessarily so, even though I would not exclude Agile-minded people from those leaders also.
I got another question along the same topic.
Yes.
Leaders of people is in a sense contradictory in Agile, because people with the Agile mindset lead themselves and partner. So share us your thinking about leaders of people when we want to transfer a certain amount of their leadership into the team?
So leaders of people can, in my opinion, can be in two situations. Some can lead individuals and they lead by example. They don't tell them what to do, but they demonstrate what needs to be done and allows the individuals that quote unquote follow them to decide for themselves whether that's a good example or not to follow. So that's how a leader who is not
Would that
a
be a
quote unquote
mentor? That sounds like a mentor.
A mentor, I think, is a little more hands-on. I think a leader will do things that others would not think about, and that others will look like, wow, look what just happened. So a leader can be inspiring through their actions. And I think a mentor and a leader who inspires through their actions can be two different individuals doing different things. Where a mentor, I think it's more hands-on. A leader doesn't have to talk to an individual at all. All they have to do is inspire them, and usually through their actions. Now in Agile, that can happen, but usually it's a servant leader. And a servant leader, it's not a mentor as much as an individual that tries to get individuals to do the things that individuals either will not or do not know they can do. And a servant leader is to get them to realize that these things can be done. And you use different techniques for a mentor, different techniques for a leader by example, and different techniques for a servant leader. So a servant leader, as far as let's say a scrum master or a coach would be more of a servant leader, is to get the individuals to realize for themselves what is possible without the demonstration.
Still be inspirational, right? So at any level in what you're saying is really anyone can be inspirational, not necessarily in the standard term of leadership. Correct.
And I think a servant leader is a little more difficult because it's really, you shouldn't really be showing individuals. They need to be discovering this. The leader I spoke about earlier is actually showing individuals, which is different from a servant leader. Servant leader really needs people to discover what's possible. And sometimes it's easy, sometimes difficult to get individuals to discover what is possible without showing them first, like a traditional leader who inspires. So servant leadership is different techniques are involved.
Yeah, so for you and me, mentorship is slightly different because we got facilitation, mentorship, and coaching, and all of those three should be applied to a coach, and lighter on, say, the Scrum Master. But for me personally, and you can beg to differ, is that the mentorship has a lot more hands-on to it, and then you start pulling yourself away. Same with coaching, but coaching is about expression, whereas mentorship is about actually doing, and then facilitation is bringing people together and trying to lift them up. I think that's probably the best way I can term it.
Yeah, mentorship is definitely, in my mind, more hands-on. I would agree with that.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So do we have any new participants? Now I asked the host that maybe we can do the presentation again, but that would be something that individuals can vote on.
It's up to anybody that's in here.
And put it in the chat. Some of us missed the presentation, unfortunately.
More people on?
It's up to the participants. Yep, completely. They can vote on it, whatever they want to do.
Okay, I'll give you one more for fun. Rudolph, is that?
Yes.
That's the best way to call you.
Yes.
Psychological safety, how does that affect, or how do you combine that with the mindset?
So
do you think it's part of the mindset, or is it something separate?
So I wrote a post, a two-part post on LinkedIn about psychological. It actually is about happiness, which is related to psychological safety. Now, I'm a pretty controversial individual, so that's why this was the title of this presentation. I do not believe in psychological safety. In fact, I think it's counterproductive. And I'll give you an example, and I'll take it from the article the post that I wrote. I think the post was, I forgot what the post name was, but it was talking about the most successful team in the history of baseball. Oh, it's called the Dynasty. To be a dynasty in baseball, you have to win 3 World Series in a row. And only 2 teams in the history of baseball over 100 years old, have done that. One is the New York Yankees. Everybody knows about the Yankees. But I asked people to name the third, and nobody really knows, unless you're a baseball fan. It's the Oakland Athletics. The Oakland Athletics won 3 World Series in a row and 5 pennants in a row. So they were dominant. And they're kind of an example of a team that has to work together to be successful. This team was the most dysfunctional, violent team there was in baseball at the time. They would abuse each other. They put each other in the hospital. And what made it worse is their owner was the cheapest owner in baseball at the time, to the point where the team members just outwardly would criticize him and call him a cheap SOB in the media, yet they still won. No one else was able to beat them. So I carry that forward and say, people say, well, yeah, that's baseball about IT. I say, yeah, what about Steve Jobs? I mean, that guy was, he was borderline a sadist, yet he was successful. So I believe that whether you have psychological safety or you don't have psychological safety, that is not a critical element in success. Some people, the adrenaline you get from being in that atmosphere drives you to be successful. While others, they need a different environment. So I don't think there's a causation in that psychological safety per se, because some people like the intensity of a situation where they are pushed to do better, where if they don't do better, they know there's going to be issues, and that what makes them successful. So I'm not a buyer of that, because there's evidence to show that the opposite of that, people are wildly successful, even more successful. And if anyone watched the Michael Jordan on Netflix, the documentary, his teammates pretty much hated his guts. He was a major a-hole. Do you know of any other team that's as successful in the 90s or in the modern era as the Bulls? You can't mention many.
I've done it without him, right?
Yes, that's right. They couldn't. When he was gone.
You've actually mentioned a couple of mentality views. So the first one is really industrial type of mentality, whip, whip, whip. People can't get out of it. Many people can't get out of their job. They want money. So that's a very easy solution there. However, I've seen people of lesser skill compete against other people with higher skills, and I specifically chose the lesser skill because I had the confidence that they could do it, and they did. Now, the speed is in Agile is a determination on the quality, right? And everything that resolves that quality and supports the customer as well as the company. Some of the fast going, some of the Michael Jordans, if you like, put a lot of stuff to the side, right? He's an individual, I'm doing this myself, but if he doesn't have the team, well, he's not going to do it himself.
Correct.
So this is where we get the psychological safety is you take a team and you want them to be autonomous, say like a mini company, they're going to fly, they're going to support each other. If you have someone whipping you in gear, and that's still happening, and it will continue to happen, you don't necessarily have a choice, right? You have a choice. I can leave here, but I've got to do some planning to get out of here because I'm going to be stuck without any money, or my partner's going to be angry with me, blah blah blah. You've got so many excuses there. And then the other one with Michael Jordan is about the hero, right? The individual, he's the hero. We would expect someone like Michael Jordan to pull up the people, so they may not be as good as him, but they may have enough that when he's out, that they can carry on the game, right? So those are kind of 2 points I have there.
But one thing about Michael Jordan is before, he was a high-scoring top guy. He couldn't win anything until Phil Jackson showed up. So Phil Jackson actually introduced the team concept to Michael, that you can't do it by yourself. But he was still a major a-hole even with the team, but he understood his role better, that he can't do it by himself. It didn't make him any more likable, but he was able to take that team and do what was necessary, and sometimes pushing people's buttons.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, people pushing your buttons or you have some fire in your feet makes you do things you would not necessarily do normally. And those things that you do may actually be necessary to be successful. So when people talk about psychological safety, I'm actually not a proponent for that.
Mm.
I'm a proponent. Yeah, I'm a proponent for, okay, it's going to get tough because doing certain things that other people don't do can be hard. So I can't.
I agree. I do agree.
I can't
with
protect
that.
you from. Yeah, I can't protect you from that. Can you?
Okay.
Can you do it?
I do agree with that, but on the outside. So
Yes.
within a team, you're building a team, but outside, as you well know, I'm sure everyone's been looking at how society's been a pain at this moment. From the outside, we do need to toughen up. People need to toughen up and just accept it because you don't know who they are. But when you're in a team, guess what? We're working together. We have to, regardless of our personality. After a while, in some cases, actually in a lot of cases, that, you know, as you well know, they go through the Tuckman stages, right? And they go to where we're performing. That's where we want to get there.
Right.
And performance is based on level setting, communication, agreements, you know, that gets them to the place where I have seen teams of various qualities being very successful. So that's kind of I agree with you, but mine's a little bit of a flip.
Yeah. Well, I think we're both correct. Only because I've dealt with teams where there are actually individuals in the teams that are a-holes on purpose. Okay, I have to deal with them, but I have to deal with them differently than I deal with someone who's very nice. So sometimes some individuals need psychological safety and some individuals need what the old saying is, a kick in the pants. Yeah. Or to be hung out the window and you're holding them by their tie and they go, oh my God, okay, then you pull them back in. So it's the opposite of psychological safety. Of course,
I totally hope they wear ties.
I'm not talking literally, but individual is unique and the approach is different. I mean, there's some individuals that if it's not difficult, it's not hard, it's not worth it. Yet the individual may be critical to what you're trying to do.
Yeah. In some cases, I've had to let people go, but I appreciate this because I've got to go now. But Rudy, thank you very much. Good stuff.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it.